Hello everyone and welcome back to this brand new video. In this mini series we are going to create a minimap in Unity. The first thing that we need to do is we need to set up the UI system of this minimap. Let's create a brand new image. Let's go UI, let's create a brand new image. And the canvas scaler, it needs to be scaled with screen size, and the reference resolution, let's put it to 1920 and 1080. So let's go back to the image. So this image is going to be the base of our minimap. So what we can do is we can anchor it at the top right corner. And let's set it to be something like 50 and minus 50. We can make the width and the height of this minimap to be something like 450 and the same in the height. Now for the color, I want it to be something like, and for the sprite, I want to use already prepared, so I'll have a couple of sprites ready for this project. As you can see, if you want to get all of these sprites, then at the link where you can get all of the source files are going to be in the description down below. So let's use this minimap background, which is simply just a circular sprite, and this is how it looks like. So this is going to be our background. All right, then the next thing that we need to do is we need to create a brand new empty object. We need to make it stretch to fill in this entire minimap element, and this is going to be our visibility rectangle. This visibility rectangle is outside of the background element, which is obviously not what we want. So what we want to do is we want to set the offset in each of the sides to be something like 45 pixels, so something like this. Then inside of this visibility rectangle, we want to create a brand new empty, actually the brand new image, and let's make it stretch to fill in this entire visibility rectangle. Then for the sprite, I want to use the minimap background, and this can be called something like screen holder. Then what I also want to do is I want to add the mask component onto this game object, and let's untick show mask graphic. All right, so down the next element that we want to do is we want to create a brand new image. Let's make it stretch to fill in this entire element. Let's make the offset to be a minus 20 in each side, and the image that I want to use is going to be this grid image. Let's set the image type to be tiled, and let's set the color to be 15. So what we want to do is, well, first of all, let's rename this to the grid. And what we want to do inside of this screen holder is we want to create a couple of sub holders that will be used as a holder for our minimap elements. Create, first of all, a brand new empty object. So let's make this element stretch to fill in this entire parent holder. And let's rename this to something like map holder. Let's duplicate, and let's rename this to blip holder, or let's actually blip a screen holder. We are done with our visibility rec. Alright, so let's create a brand new image inside of the background image, and let's make it stretch to fill in this entire background. And what we want to use is going to be the minimap border image, so something like this. Alright, so once we created this image, let's rename this image to be something like border. Then the next image that we want to do is going to be, well, first of all, let's create a brand new image. Let's make it stretch, and what we want to use is going to be the minimap overlay, so something like this. And also what we want to do is we want to create the player minimap element. So let's create a brand new image. Let's set the width and the height to be something like 65 as well as 65. Let's set the sprite to be the minimap element sprite, so something like this. And we can actually set the width and the height to be maybe something like 85 and 85 is a bit better. Alright, so let's rename these objects to be, well, first of all, this is going to be the player. This is going to be the overlay, and the last thing that we want to do is we want to create a brand new empty game object. We want to make it stretch, we want to add the offset of 5 pixels on each side, and let's call this object to be keep in bounds holder, so something like this. Alright, and we are done with our UI system. So what we want to do is we want to start creating our scripts for our minimap. Alright, so let's go into the scripts folder. Let's create a brand new folder, which is going to be the minimap. So all of the scripts for the minimap. Let's create a brand new subfolder inside of this minimap folder, and this is going to be the abstract. So let's go into this folder and let's create a brand new C# script, which we can call something like element. Alright, so let's open the script up into the Visual Studio, and the first thing that we want to do is we want to make this class to be abstract. So a public abstract class, and it needs to derive from one of behavior. Alright, so the first variable that we want to create is going to be the protected transform, and this is going to be called something like target. Alright, so afterwards let's create the protected rec transform, which is going to be called something like rec. What we want to do then is we want to create a public rec transform. Let's call this something like rec, and this is going to be the getter. And the first thing that we want to do is we want to check if rec is equals to null. If it's equals to null, then we want to say that the rec is going to be equals to get component rec transform. Now if, after we try to get a component, if the rec is still equals to null, that means that this component is not found onto this game object. So let's say that the rec needs to be equals to game object dot add component rec transform. So we want to add this component, and the very last thing that we want to do is we want to return this protected variable. Alright, so what we want to create then is we want to add the protected virtual void on enable, and what we're going to do inside of this method is we're going to cache in the reference to our minimap. Of course, at the moment we don't really have the minimap class implemented, so we are simply going to add the comment to get minimap reference. Alright, so what we want to do afterwards is we want to create the protected void, which is going to be called a late update. So let's create a brand new protected abstract void, which we can call something like update position. Then let's create another protected abstract void, which we can call something like update rotation. And the very last method that we want is going to be protected abstract void update scale. So inside of the late update, we are going to call all of these methods. So let's simply say update position, then update rotation, and update scale. And the very last method that we need to create is going to be the public void that we can call something like set target. And this method will require a single argument, which is going to be the target, so transform. And what we're going to do is we're going to say that this dot target is going to be equals to what we send as a parameter, and that is all we need to do. So let's go back to Unity. So let's create a brand new C# script, and let's call this something like minimap. So what we want to do inside of this class is we want to create and add a couple of references. So let's create a brand new header, which is going to be references. So the first reference is going to be to our player. So let's simply say serialized field transform, and we can call this something like player. Then the next thing that we want to add is going to be the UI references. So let's add a bit of space to separate. Let's create a brand new serialized field, which is going to be the rec transform, and this is going to be the screen holder. Then the next reference is going to be the keep in bounds holder. So let's create a brand new rec transform. Let's call this keep in bounds holder. Alright, then we need the map holder. So let's create a brand new rec transform, which is going to be the map holder. And the very last UI reference that we need is going to be the visibility rec. So let's create a brand new serialized field rec transform, and this is going to be called something like visibility rec. Alright, so we are done with our references. So let's create a brand new header, and this is going to be our parameters. Alright, so we are going to have only a single parameter, which is going to be the zoom level. So let's create a brand new serialized field. It's going to be a float, and let's call this something like zoom level. So what we want to do then is we need to create a couple of delegates that we will use to, well, for example, register and unregister the minimap elements as well as get the minimap itself. So let's create a brand new public static function, and of course we need to be using system. So let's say using system, and we need to create a brand new static function. And this function is going to require the element as well as the transform, and it will return back the element. And we can call this something like register. Alright, so what we want to create then is we want to create a public static action. And this action is going to require the element, and this is going to be called unregister. So we are going to register, we are going to return the spawned element, and whenever we're going to unregister that element, we are going to send that spawned element whenever we're going to call this action. Alright, very last delegate that we need is going to be the public static function, and it will return the minimap reference, and we can call this something like get minimap. Alright, so we are done with our delegates. So what we want to create then is we want to add the list of the elements. So let's create a private list, and it will hold the element, and this is going to be the elements, so the current elements inside of the minimap. And the very last variables that we want to create is going to be the private variables, and the first one is going to be the private vector, vector2, and this is going to be called the x rotation, and by default let's put it to vector2 dot right, and this is going to be the private vector2, and it's going to be called y rotation, and this is going to be by default a vector2 dot up. And the very last variable that we need is going to be the private float, and it's going to be called north direction. Alright, and this is all we need to do with our variables. So let's create a brand new region. Alright, so let's create a couple of methods. So the first method that we need is going to be the private void on enable, as well as private void on disable. So what we're going to do inside of these methods is we're going to subscribe something to these delegates. Get minimap is going to be equals, and what we are going to create is we are going to create the anonymous method that will return this minimap class. So let's start with parentheses, then let's add the lambda expression, let's add a couple of curly brackets, and what we are going to do is we are going to say return this. And that is all we need to do. So what we are essentially going to do whenever we're going to call this delegate is we're simply going to return this minimap class. In on disable, what we want to do is we want to say get minimap is going to be equals to null. Alright, so let's implement a couple of methods, and the first method that we want to create is going to be the private void late update. And what we are going to do inside of this method, we are going to update the x and y rotations. So let's simply say x rotation is going to be equals to a new vector2, and the x position is going to be the player dot right dot x, and the y position is going to be the minus player dot right dot z. Alright, and then we need to update the y rotation. So let's simply say that the y rotation is going to be equals to new vector2, and for the x we need to say minus player dot forward dot x, and for the y we need to say that it's going to be player dot forward dot z, and this is all we need to do to update the x and y rotation. Alright, so then let's implement the private void, which is going to be the update method, and what we want to do is we want to create a method that will calculate the north direction. So let's call this something like calculate north direction. So let's generate this new method. The north direction is going to be equals to player dot Euler angles dot y. And that is all we need to do. So now we are getting the direction to the north, which is what we need. So what we need to do then is we need to create a couple of methods to add and remove minimap elements. So let's simply say the method that will return the element class, and we can call this something like add, and this method will require the element which is going to be the element, as well as the transform, which is going to be the target. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to create a brand new variable, which is going to be a new element. And what we want to do is we want to instantiate this element that we send in as a parameter. And for the holder, which is the parent, we want to use the screen holder, is we want to say that the new element dot set target is going to be, we want to call this method, and the target is going to be the target that we send as a parameter. Then what we want to do is we want to say that the elements, which is the list of all of the elements, dot add, and we want to add this brand new created element, and then we simply want to return this new element. And that is all we need to do with this method. So let's collapse this, and let's create a brand new private method that we can call something like remove. So this is going to be extremely simple method. So what we want to do is we want to say, well, first of all, we need to send the element, which we can call something like element. And then what we want to do is we want to say that the elements dot remove. So we want to remove the element from the list, and the element that we want to remove is the element that we send as a parameter. So let's simply say that remove this element, and what we want to do then is we want to say destroy element dot game object. So we don't want to just remove this element from the list, we also want to destroy this element object. So we simply need to also destroy the element game object. And this is all we need to do. So let's go back to onDisable and onEnable. And let's say that register is going to be plus equals to add, and onRegister is going to be plus equals to remove. So now let's copy, and onDisable, let's say that register needs to unsubscribe from this add method, and onRegister needs to unsubscribe from this remove method. And that is all we need to do. So let's create a brand new folder. Let's call this something like elements. And this is going to be a brand new C# script that we can call something like map. And then let's create a brand new C# script, which we can call something like blip. Alright, so the first thing that we need to do within this class is we want to make sure that this class derives not from monoBehavior, but from element class. And then what we want to do is we want to implement a couple of methods, which is update, rotation, scale, and position. And what we also want to do is we want to override the onEnable method. So we can say protected override void onEnable. So what we're going to do inside of this method is we're going to say rec.sizeDelta is going to be equals to a new vector2. What we want to do is we want to create a brand new serialized field, which is going to be private float, and let's call this something like width. And then we want to create a brand new serialized field, which is going to be also private, and this needs to be called length. So let's say that this map elements scale is going to be width and the length. Alright, we can go back to the element class, and let's implement a brand new protected variable, which is going to be the minimap reference. Alright, so let's go back to the onEnable method, and what we want to do is we want to get the minimap reference. So let's simply say that the minimap is going to be equals to minimap.getMinimap. Then considering that there's a chance that getMinimap delegate is going to be equals to null, and if we're going to try to invoke this delegate when it's going to be equals to null, we're going to get errors. So to avoid it is we can say that invoke this delegate if it's not equals to null, and to do that we need to say question mark dot and invoke. And what this will mean is that if the getMinimap delegate is equals to null, we're not going to get any errors, which is always good to avoid. And what we also want to do is we want to go back to the protected late update method, and we want to add a simple check to check if a minimap is equals to null. And then what we want to do is we want to return, because we are not going to be able to calculate the position and the rotation without the reference to our minimap. Alright, so let's go back to the minimap class, and what we want to do is we want to implement a couple of methods that we will use to calculate the minimap element position and the rotation. So what we want to create is we want to create a public method that will return the vector2, and we can call this something like new position, and we want to send the vector 3, which is going to be the position. Alright, so what we want to do within this method is, first of all, let's create a brand new variable, which is going to be new position. And what we want to do, let's go back to Unity. Let's create a brand new folder inside of the Minimap folder. Let's call this something like utility. Let's go into this folder. Let's create a brand new C# script, which we can call something like utility. Let's open this script, and this script is not going to derive from mono behavior. Let's remove these methods. So let's create a brand new public, a static vector2, and we can call this something like calculate position. So what we want to send as an argument, we want to send the vector 3, which is going to be the position. Then we want to send also the vector, which is going to be the target position. Then what we want to send is going to be the vector 2, which is going to be the x rotation, as well as vector 2, which is going to be the y rotation. So what we're going to do within this method is we're going to calculate the blip position. And what we want to do first is we want to create a brand new variable, which is going to be called something like offset. And this offset is going to be equals to position minus the target. Alright, so once we have the offset, let's create a brand new variable, which is going to be the new position. And this is going to be the offset dot x multiplied by x rotation, and then new position is going to be plus equals offset dot z multiplied by y rotation. Alright, so once we calculated the new position, let's simply say return new position. Let's go back to the Minimap class, and what we want to do is we want to say utility dot calculate position. Position is going to be the position that we send in as an argument. Then the target is going to be the player dot position, and we can actually maybe call this player instead of the target, but I think it doesn't really matter that much. Then for the x rotation and y rotation is of course going to be equals to x rotation and y rotation, and that is all we need to do. So now we're going to get this new position, and what we're going to do is we're going to say that new position is going to be multiplied and equals to zoom level, and then let's simply say return new position. And that is all we need to do to position the minimap element in the right place inside of our minimap. Alright, so what we want to do then is we want to create a brand new public that will return vector 3, and we can call this something like new rotation. So as an argument, we want to send the vector, which is going to be the rotation. Getting the rotation is going to be much simpler, so let's simply say return a new vector. So the x and the y rotation is going to be equals to 0, and z-axis is going to be equals to player dot Euler angles dot y minus rotation dot y, and that is all we need to do to get the new blip rotation. Alright, so for the scale, we're not going to create this method inside of the minimap class, because for the map and for the blip, the updating the scale is going to be a bit different, and position and rotation is going to be exactly the same way, so we can actually put this inside of the minimap instead. So let's go back into the map class, and let's create a brand new variable inside of the update position method, and let's call this something like new position, and this is going to be equals to minimap dot new position, and as an argument we want to send target dot position. And what we can actually do is we can simply say that the rec dot local position is going to be equals to whatever this method is going to return. So now inside of the update rotation method, let's simply say that the rec dot local Euler angles is going to be equals to minimap dot new rotation, and of course as an argument is going to be target dot Euler angles. Alright, so inside of the update scale method, we want to say that the rec dot local scale is going to be equals to new vector, and the x and y is going to be equals to minimap dot zoom level, and z is going to be equals to 1. And this is all we need to do to update the position, rotation, and the scale of our map element. Alright, so what we also want to do, let's go into the add element method, and whenever we spawn a brand new element, what we want to do is we want to check if this new instantiated element type, so let's say get type, to get the type of this new element. So let's say if the type is equals to map, and actually we need to say a type of a map. So what we want to do is we want to check if this new instantiated element is equals to the map element. If that is the case, we need to say that the new element dot transform dot set parent, and the parent is going to be the map holder. Alright, and this is all we need to do at the current moment. So let's go back to Unity. Alright, so I think we are going to wrap up this video because I think it's going to be long enough already. If you want to get all of these files, meaning that all of the complete project, you can go into the description when there's going to be a link where you can get all of these files. Also, if you enjoy my videos, be sure to subscribe to keep up with upcoming videos. But other than that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.